Joe, I'm going crazy. I think I'm seeing the same people everywhere I go, every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I don't know why. Joe, do you have any answers for me? Why is this happening to me?
Is it because you're sitting in front of three mirrors?
It could be that. It could also be because we're still in quarantine and we can't go out and see people. But I think it's the mirrors.
Yeah, I think that's the situation. You might want to get out of your clown costume and sort of get back to
Oh
reality.
yeah,
Snap back to
I've
reality.
been in it for like since we last recorded. It probably really smells right now. It, it smells so badly that I'm actually talking about football before baseball first. Do you know that's amazing?
That is very impressive on your
Yeah.
standards.
So last week we had the NFL 2020 draft, which was really the first big sporting event in the United States since the shutdown began, which is
Yep.
amazing to think about.
Now the Cincinnati Bengals were so terrible last year. They were blessed with the number one overall pick in the draft. Although the last 20 years, the number one picks in the drafts have not really done too well. The only one who's really done well, I guess, is Eli Manning. I mean, he didn't want to play for the Chargers when he was drafted in '04, and he ended up getting traded over to the Giants right away in the draft. During the draft, he won two Super Bowls, but that was pretty much all he really did. He only really made like three or four playoffs in the 15 years he was a quarterback. So I mean, he's probably going to the Hall of Fame, but
I mean,
I don't think
his,
he deserves first ballot. I mean, you got two Super Bowls, but
hey, it was two Super Bowls against the Patriots. The Patriots of all
yeah.
people who won.
I still want to know what was wrong with Brady in that '08 one. I mean, his eyes just did not look right in that game.
Hey, every team's had their kryptonite. The Dodgers had the Yankees. At least twice in two different dynasty series. The Braves had the Yankees as well.
the
You had
the Lakers had the
the
Celtics.
Bills had everyone. So it's just those quirks.
But yeah, so the Bengals picked Joe Burrow. Sort of an interesting story. He's always touting he's from the not so very wealthy area in Ohio. He's trying to get back to the community, and now that he's, I guess, out of college, he can use his name and raise money and help people because you can't do that while you're in college.
yeah,
Um,
I heard. He's
so
also very well spoken. That I had listened to one of his interviews where he was asked that he transferred schools and got better. Is it anything with the coaching or anything? He said, no, it's just I didn't play. I didn't play well in that old school, and that I didn't do the best of my abilities. So he seems to be a very well spoken kid, and for a team like the Bengals who really need some good
well, the
news,
Bengals are not a very
no,
good organization.
and
I mean, they've had whoever the ginger is right now. I'm blanking on his name. But before that, they had Carson Palmer, who I believe was a number one pick as well. He was a pretty good quarterback, but he really didn't reach his full potential until he was under Bruce Arians in Arizona with the Cardinals, and he was putting up some of his best years there. The Bengals are just one of those organizations like the Browns that might flirt a couple of years with some okayness, but they're just not well run.
and yeah,
Um,
and
I don't know if that's gonna hurt Joe Burrow. I mean, we saw the Chiefs do really, really well with Patrick Mahomes, and he flourished under Andy Reid's system. And I don't know if Joe Burrow is going to have that system there in Cincinnati. And my dad and I were talking a little bit that maybe instead of taking Joe Burrow with the number one pick, maybe they take Chase Young, who went number two from Ohio State, who went to the Washington Redskins, South Park copyright, um, and maybe take the guy over from Clemson next year in the draft if they do so bad. Um, I mean, you got to be able to tank it and get that number one pick again.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Because defense always wins you a championship, but this is a quarterback-driven league, so
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a big, big, interesting situation. But also, Green Bay, you were talking about a little bit,
Yeah.
had some problems.
Yeah, they created a lot of controversy by trading up to draft quarterback Jordan Love in the first round, which created a whole new set of questions for the Packers. Are they looking to move away from Aaron Rodgers in the next year or two? What's going on? How is he going to react? And the answer is we don't know how Rodgers is going to react until we hear from him, which, considering the current global situation, might not be for a while. But yeah, this kind of fits into the modus operandi for the Packers. I know that general manager Brian, sorry if I butcher this, Brian Grutenis is only in his third year, but this isn't the first time that the Packers have done something like this. That Aaron Rodgers himself was drafted while Brett Favre was still the Packers quarterback and had an up and down 2 years before Favre said he needs to play and I need to play and I need to be traded so that he can play and I can play. So this, I think it's.
I'm not sure how that's going to work.
Yeah.
But
well, for Aaron Rodgers, it took. He was drafted in 2005, and Favre was traded away in 2000 at the end of 2007, if I believe.
yes, because the Jets got him for the end of '08. Because I remember in high school we had gym class and we were playing football towards the end of the year. Or the end of the semester there, and I had rolled my ankle. I was like, I'll be quarterback. I'll be like Brett Favre, and I threw like 4 touchdown passes. I was like, yeah, just like Favre. And then he got injured, and then the Jets blew their like 8-1 start to the year.
Yeah.
But you know,
Yeah.
it's the Jets.
Yeah, but the only other similarities with this, Aaron Rodgers is under contract through 2023, and he has said that he wants to play until he's at least 40, or at the very least, or even beyond. So you could see another Tom Brady like quarterback if he holds up. So
yeah, I mean, Rodgers has had some injuries these last several years, so I don't know how well his body's going to hold up.
yeah, I mean he did take
Brady, on the other hand, really only missed time because of the ankle injury or whatever it was back in like '09, I think it was, something like that.
Yeah, the 1 year that they missed.
Miami ended up winning that division. But other than that, he's only really missed time because of Deflategate and stuff like that. Brady's been pretty good. The TB12 method must be doing something.
Yeah.
But
you know who also has been.
We'll have to see.
You know who also has been doing good, and I know you want to talk about this, is Drew Brees and the and New Orleans. How was their draft?
Yeah. Well, not. It was more of a post-draft sort of situation because they had the guy Taysom Hill that they've had the last year or so, and he's been sort of like doing a little bit of everything, and he's shown that like he can play and he wants to play. Brees was injured for a good part of last year, and while Hill wasn't the quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater took over. Hill looks like he might be poised if this is Brees' last year. I mean, he's got two years left on his deal, but Sean Payton kind of let it slip, saying that this will be Brees' last year, but we're not really sure. But they re-signed Hill to a 2-year, $21 million deal, or an extension through 2021. But then they've got contract talks with Jameis Winston, who Tampa Bay released so that they can sign Tampa Brady. So I'm not sure what the situation is here. I don't know. if they're just going to use Taysom Hill as more of like a wildcat guy more, and Winston's going to be the backup. I mean, Winston, I believe, led the league in passing yards last year, and he had 30 interceptions, but maybe this is a year for him where he's just going to sit back behind Drew Brees, learn a couple things, and try and cut down on his interceptions and learn to focus a little bit more. Then again, you should probably do that with Tom Brady.
Yeah.
But yeah, so New Orleans sort of was in that mix with Green Bay of the weird quarterback situation.
And and then of course the best in show of the draft have been the dogs, including Bill Belichick's Nike for holding the fort when their masters were off screen and just keeping everyone entertained while they did important behind the scenes stuff off the camera. All the good boys on camera. So I just want to say that. Now that we got football out of the way.
But
we don't have football out of the way. What do we miss?
Apparently, I don't know if you noticed, but Jerry Jones was on his $250 million yacht for his picking of all his drafts, and apparently he wouldn't touch his phone.
Mm-hmm.
He had women just holding it. Apparently his daughters too, so it wasn't just like scantily clad women.
Sure.
Hey, I mean, if you're a billionaire, I mean, I guess you can do whatever you want. Well, and then in 20 years they'll get you, but
yeah.
But you know, I just thought that was like kind of weird. I mean, I guess you're an old billionaire, you don't want to like mess it up now, but at the same time, like, come on, it should be your phone.
If you can't trust your phone during this virus, what can you trust?
Yeah, and I'm not sure why they were having so much trouble trying to set up this whole draft thing. Like, have none of these people like ever done a simulated draft for like FanDuel or anything? Like,
it's probably just
put all the names in there. It has their positions, their schools. You click who you want. It's not that hard.
Yeah. Well, it's also the coordination and stuff that I over the last week I watched a charity live stream, which normally is done in person, but had to be done remotely, and one person, basically like 2 or 3 people, had to manage coordinating between computers from around the country, and at one point they lost one of their 2 servers during the middle of it and had to go to a backup within minutes. But it's seeing that live, it's give credit for the people who have to manage this stuff, because it's a lot of work behind the scenes to get
but
done.
It should only be 33 computers really hooked up together.
Well,
I mean, you have the 32 teams and Roger Goodell.
But you also have all the players and other stuff when you want interviews and all stuff. It's a big.
I know they want to make their money off it, but
and also remember, usually this is stuff that's planned several months in advance, and they kind of had to scramble this together in like 6 weeks. This idea to do this remotely, but I digress.
I don't know. Anyway,
back to base.
For the real fun stuff, the one sport that actually has things really going
that has like a little bit of playing, but a lot of news. And let's start with the top. That MLB finally announced their investigation into the 2018 sign stealing allegations against the Red Sox. And oh boy, if you think that the Astros got a slap on the wrist, wait until I tell you about this. So
basically, the Red Sox were gifted this year's World Series. Is that sort of how it works?
It's something like that. So here's what the conclusion has been. The results of this: the Red Sox are stripped of their second-round pick in the 2020 draft.
Wow.
Advanced scout replay coordinator J.T. Watkins was determined to be the ringleader and has thus been suspended without pay for the entire season and is prohibited from holding his previous role for the 2021 season. And the big one, former manager Alex Cora, who was fired by the Red Sox earlier when it came out that he was the ringleader in the Astros scheme, is only banned through the 2020 postseason because they determined he had no role in the Red Sox scandal. Now, I initially came out for the Astros, saying that it was a pretty significant punishment. Later findings and understandings have led me to walk some of it back and to say some of it is a little light, especially considering that players were not disciplined when some are, i.e., Carlos Beltran, were explicitly or implied to be involved. This is Deflategate basically for MLB. This slap in the wrist. The one person is banned through the 2020 postseason, and not even for. And when we can all smell a rat here, if I can be a little opinionated, that if to say that this just happened for the Red Sox the year after the Astros did something similar, and the manager for the Red Sox is the one who was coordinating everything for the Astros. How is Cora not involved in any way in this situation? There's no way that Cora couldn't have been involved.
Yeah, as the manager of a team or a head coach, you should be knowing like what your players are looking at in the film room or what's going on the bench. I know you can't know everything, but like whenever you hear this had nothing to do with the Red Sox, but like you hear things where like a player died from an overdose. It's like, what was it? What could have it been? And it's like then everything like sort of trickles out. Yeah, this guy was hooked up with this guy. Yeah, we all knew he was taking all this stuff. And it's like, all right, stuff trickles through, but like Cora definitely knew something.
Yeah.
Or was definitely in on
this.
This.
Now some other things that were in it that they said that the difference between the Astros and the Red Sox was that while the Astros were stealing signs in real time, the Red Sox had a more simplistic nature that they decoded signs, but they did not communicate them through a trash can or a beeper or anything. That they basically told whoever got on base, this is what the signs are, and then when they got to second, that runner would then relay it over to the batter. Now, the second part of that, the runner relaying the signs, that's fine. That's gamesmanship. But you still got those signs by looking at a camera, which is a digital device, which is illegal under edict from the commissioner. So
yeah, I mean, at that point, you might just like mic up everybody and be like, "Hey, why don't you just tell everyone what your signs are?" Which is why I'm very against miking up the players because that takes away from everything.
We'll get to that in a little bit. I want to bring that up in a later segment today. But the other thing they said is that the Red Sox front office consistently communicated MLB sign stealing rules to non-player staff and made commendable efforts toward instilling a culture of compliance in their organization, quote unquote. That's good and all, but you still cheated. You still cheated, and I thought you Rob Manfred said after the Apple Watch incident with these very Red Sox in 2017 that anyone who gets caught stealing signs using electronics is going to get severely punished. I'm sorry, the Astros weren't severely punished, and certainly not the Red Sox were for this. Unless you're going to move those cameras right out of the dugout and move them up into the press booth, you're going to see more of this continue, I fear. You're going to see other teams say, oh, they got a slap in the wrist. It's only the manager that gets caught. The players are fine. We don't care about the manager as much anymore. So, well, as long as the players say, I know nothing, I see nothing, I didn't feel like going up against the power.
The players really should be held accountable for. I mean, I know like players can switch teams and whatnot, and it's sort of like, oh yeah, well, I don't know if we can punish them for that, like we had talked about with Carlos Beltran going to the Mets. But it's a big gray area of stuff we've never seen before.
Well, that's all on Tony Clark, the head of the Players Union, and he's already been criticized for giving away some things in the collective bargaining agreements, which led to the free agent freezes in 2018 and 2019. But You are right. This is squarely on Clark for saying we'll protect the 3% of players in the league, the Astros, at the expense of the other 97% of players, everyone else. Which, as we know from Mike Fiers and others, a lot of them really want to see retribution on the players. Now, considering current situations, we likely won't see that, but there are still some very angry players, and with the collective bargaining agreement coming up very shortly, we'll probably see that going. And speaking of players' unions and taking a step up and other collective bargaining, there were some conflicting reports regarding the minor league baseball, major league baseball negotiations. As we know, MLB has been trying to contract minor league teams by up to 40.
Yeah.
And it came.
Yeah, I feel like every week I find out there's like another team for the Yankees. It's like, yeah, no, this is like Class W. I'm like, what the hell's Class
Well,
W?
the Yankees have among the most minor league players, and under these plans, they'd have some they'd have some teams flipped around. Staten Island would actually contract. That's one of the 40 teams on the block. Among other teams that have been contracting, Binghamton, which was supposed to have the Double A All Star game. Although there have been reports that that may be into another minor league thing. Williamsport, which is ironically in recent years has always hosted a major league game, and the entire Appalachian League is one of the other ones off. Now, on April 21st, there was a report that with the stark realities of the coronavirus more or less wiping out any profit for minor league baseball in 2020 and maybe into 2021, that minor league baseball begrudgingly agreed to many of the points in MLB's plan. But within hours of that, minor league baseball issued a statement saying that quote, recent articles on the negotiation between minor league baseball and major league baseball are largely inaccurate. There have been no agreements on contraction or any other issues. So basically, who knows at this point what's going to happen to minor league baseball? Especially considering that a lot of the groundswell support is based in minor league baseball. Like, you don't see people in Montana or West Virginia driving several hours to a minor league stadium. They're going to go to Billings. They're going to go to Charleston. They're going to go to their local minor league team if they want to see a game in person, because that's the only practical way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get rid of those teams, I fear for what it does with support in the rest of the league. Now, I've also said that they could tie this into expansion, and considering the climate of the situation, MLB might be willing to try to quickly recoup money from 1 to 2 lost seasons of revenue potentially by quickly pivoting to expanding to 2 franchises, in which case some of those teams you contract you can re-affiliate with these new teams and overall reduce the amount for each team but keep the amount of minor league teams intact.
Just to sort of talk about just a little bit of with some of that money stuff, just to sort of flip back to the NFL a little bit. It sort of reminded me, an ex-Jet player, Wayne Corbett, he had posted on Twitter the other day of the signing money that he got. He said he thought he felt rich when he got the extra $1,500. It's $1,500. He thought he was super rich when he signed that all those years ago. Yeah. And I know inflation and everything goes up and down, mostly up.
Never down.
But what you're seeing, it's like some of these minor league players now, they're probably making that much money. Yeah. But compared to like what some of these other players are making, I don't know how you can keep up with still paying for all these minor league players with all these major league players just making so much money and taken away from the ownership that they gotta shell out for all these players who most of them don't even make it. I mean, we talked about the Red Sox lost their second pick in the draft. Like, who cares? That second round pick could probably never see past single A.
Yeah, there have been many good.
Baseball's sort of like that, and it doesn't really matter. And sure, like you had mentioned, losing those teams to some of those areas where it's really the only team in the area. I mean, we live in an area where I've gone to the New Jersey Jackals, I've gone to the Rockland Boulders, we've seen the Trenton Thunder. I mean, we could keep going. I mean, there's so many different baseball teams in this area if we want to pick a game to go see. Obviously not right now because of the current situation, but it doesn't matter. But like when you head out like Midwest and whatnot, and you get some of these other teams, that takes away from that sort of like local dynamic. I know I had not that I shadowed one day at the Jackals game where they were where I was in the announce booth, and the guys there were just some guys who just really loved baseball, wanted to have some fun. I mean, that's how I was at the radio station at college. I mean, I wasn't getting paid. I mean, they were getting paid at at the Jackals, but it was just sort of like a community thing that they were like sort of local and fun to do. But when you have all this other money devoted to all these players making $30 million a year, it's just you got to take it from somewhere else and just save money by closing one of those low class teams and get rid of those managers, the players, the uniforms, paying for those stadiums and all that stuff. It's just a money business.
And we already know that basically all minor league teams are going to get zero revenue from games because very few have television contracts, and even the major league level, some teams may barely see anything, if at all, from stadium attendance, depending on when they're able to reopen, and even then it would probably be gradual. So both on the major league and minor league level, we could see several owners willing to sell or even declare bankruptcy because of this. So you might even see that with or without an agreement, some teams just contract because they're physically unable to continue business. But speaking of business, our final topic of the day is the ever growing story around what's going to happen for baseball in 2020. And the latest news is that it seems that momentum is building very strongly. Don't know when, don't know how, and don't know where. But most people are now saying that baseball will be played in 2020 in some format. Now, we talked about in our last episode 2 weeks ago about the two-state plan between Arizona and Florida, as well as the just Arizona plan. Since then, it's expanded to include Texas, which is logical. They're one of the states that is reopening quickly, and they have 3 major league stadiums already there. You have the Astrodome in Houston, and you have the 2 Rangers ballparks, both the Globe Life Park and Globe Life Field, or whatever the name for the new stadium is in Arlington. Mm-hmm. But you basically have 2 stadiums in Dallas and 1 in Houston that can be used for MLB that are MLB quality. So add that to the Diamondbacks, the Marlins, and the Rays, and that's 6 major league stadiums in this plan. And then,
well, could you use any of those college stadiums?
They would use those too, but I'm mainly bringing up the major league stadiums because in all those situations, except for the old Arlington ballpark, they all have roofs, which is critical for Arizona. It gets very hot. In Florida, it gets very wet. And in Texas, where it's a little bit of both. And then Ken Rosenthal came out a few days ago saying this plan is very fluid, that it can be 5 states, it could be 10 states, it could be 12 states. and that MLB is basically taking a wait and see approach, seeing how states reopen, whether they have to reclose again. But it sounds like their plan is very modular, in which case they can whatever system they have for the season, that they're able to compartmentalize it between, if they need to do it in 3 states, they can do that. If they have 5 states or 10 states, they can take chunks out of that group and move them to that other state. And then it sounds like if they're doing that, that also sounds like that when states say, all right, you can bring them back to their home stadium, that they can do that as well.
Yeah, I mean, not to say your name on anything, but we also have to prepare for hurricane season too.
Yeah.
So we gotta be careful of Florida and Texas for those areas there in the Gulf, just in case anything crazy decides to happen, to make the situation even more.
Yeah,
worse.
because we already had that in 2018 and or 2017, and we can't move if we're under lockdown in New York. The Mets can't take a Rays game that's gotten moved out because of a hurricane this year.
Yeah.
But the other thing that's big on this is the next Tuesday, the 5th of May, the Korean Baseball Organization will have its opening day. And this will be the second major league baseball at the highest level by a country joining Taiwan.
Because the Taiwanese league started playing, and walk-off home run on day one.
Walk-off home run on day one, benches clearing brawl in the first week.
Yeah, that was a little like, you guys know you're not supposed to touch each other.
Yeah, 2 minutes later, oh wait, we're supposed to social distance. Sorry, sir.
But yeah, that was weird.
But yeah,
and then I guess
the interesting thing about the KBO is that the league is discussing a plan to gradually allow fans back into their stadiums, starting with at 20 to 25% capacity and going increasingly from there as things move on. And that would be an interest. The KBO is probably going to be the interesting case study for MLB, because while Taiwan is the first one to go, they're a small league. They only have 5 teams. They have a couple of former MLB players, but it's not as well known. The KBO, we've recently seen many of the players in there make the jump to the major leagues, and vice versa. We've seen players go there and revitalize their career. Plus, it's a much bigger deal. There are more teams. It's more well-versed in the country than, say, Taiwanese baseball is. So you'd see probably they'd move to reopen when they can, especially considering that Korea seems to have a good handle on what the cases are there. Additionally, we can also see these games, as ESPN is reportedly nearing an agreement to broadcast these games, at least while other teams are out of action in the United States. So, are you going to be watching any of this?
That'll hopefully give me something to watch, because I've had 2 obsessions this past week. One was watching Even Stevens on Disney Plus, because I had never seen that, and then 2/3 of the way through that series, I decided to get Animal Crossing.
Yeah.
So now I'm super obsessed with that. So my obsessions have really taken off this year so far. So 2020, not a great year for Joe.
Yeah, well, when life gives you lemons, you make orange juice. That's how I put it.
And then I guess to close out, to add one more thing to our many one last things, the NBA was set to start voluntary workouts on May 1st, but they're pushing that back now 1 week until May 8th. So they're including the Atlanta Hawks facility in Georgia is among one of the first in the first states to loosen home orders. So
I always thought that
we'll see who's going to show up.
I always thought that NBA would be the last of the 3 teams that have been suspended to get back to action, just because while baseball, you touch the ball, that that only the pitcher really otherwise touches it, and that ball gets exchanged basically any time it hits the ground. Hockey, you don't touch the puck, and if you do, you're wearing gloves and such. And
Yep.
the NBA, you're touching that basketball all the time with multiple people,
Yeah, and you're sweating all over that, getting your
and that
spit and
doesn't that doesn't get changed out as frequently as a baseball does. So that would
no.
that would be, in my opinion, the last sport of the three to do it. Football would
Yeah.
also be the same thing, but they don't start until August, and I expect by then that most.
Yeah, but some players do wear their gloves, not all of them, and they do change out the ball every once in a while. You'll see that, so they can wipe it down real quick.
And
Um,
you mean for football?
yeah, for
And
football.
also they don't start until August anyway, and by then things should be a lot
be a
calmer.
little bit more mellowed. But the only thing though is football. You need a lot of training to do that. I know when I was in high school, when I was doing soccer, I mean, those football players, their season didn't start till September, but they were starting back in like the end of June, getting conditioning and everything ready. So, I mean, they're professionals. They should hopefully make enough money to buy a total gym and work out at home a little bit and stay in shape.
Buy a Peloton.
So, I'm not too worried about football. Baseball, the ball should be sanitized, like you said, because it gets changed out very often. And also, when the ball's hitting off the bat at 300 miles an hour by Giancarlo Stanton when he's healthy, I think that kills the jerseys.
Yeah. Oh, we're gonna infect this player. Suddenly, 200-mile-an-hour whack off the bat and changing directions. Like, well, we're just into the ether now. And
I think we've reached that.
Yeah.
We're crossing like 37
yeah, this is one of our
minutes
longer episodes. Although considering that when we said we were not doing an episode last week, we're like, oh, nothing happened last week, so
yeah,
we'll be fine.
literally like
The next day,
like that Tuesday night, Wednesday, it was like, oh,
like
yeah, thanks.
literally,
we had lots of things.
yeah,
to
literally
catch up on.
everything we covered was from this past week. So
Yeah, so
we'll see.
it's just
yeah.
like us to be fashionably.
Yeah,
late.
fashionably late, and that by that pattern, that means this week will be quiet, and and then the next week we'll get all the news on sports coming back, hopefully.
Hopefully. All right, Voldemort. Until then,
Hey, catch you later. Sell those turnips
wash your hands.
and those turnips.